Let me tell you about my guest, the one and only Kimberly Dvorak, D-V-O-R-A-K. She is award-winning National Security and Border Security investigative reporter for TV, radio, and the print media. She is also the senior foreign policy advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy. She's a TV correspondent at CW6 News San Diego, as well as One America News Network. And her website is thekdreport.com. Hello there, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm fine. How about yourself, Chuck?
I am fair to partly cloudy.
Again.
And, I went and had a COVID test yesterday, and I think they said I got an A+, but I'm not sure.
There you go.
One of the first A's I've had in a long time, Kimberly.
There you go.
Oh, boy.
There you go. Got to keep at it. Yeah.
You know, I got to tell you, I'm really, really, really impressed on this piece that you published. With all due respect, and I think rather than me asking you some questions on it, I'd like for you to do it, because, I mean, this is, what is it called, a moving piece?
Yeah. Well, you know, the introduction of of this story, I wrote, presidents get to choose the generals they want, typically. But in this case, generals got the president they wanted so they could continue the wars overseas that were producing no results. And the four stars that were running the show, Austin, General Austin, who's the Secretary of Defense, and then you had General MacKenzie, who was running things on the ground, and you had Mark Milley, who knows what he's doing. I mean, he likes to wear his uniform and show a whole bunch of ribbons and medals, and he's not seen combat. So I just don't, understand what and why, this president kept him around.
Yeah.
But, those generals ensured that the status quo would continue on. They'd get their increase in their defense budget. They'd continue to spend money and buy some stuff that might be, kind of fun for right now, but it will be obsolete because the future of wars, as we all know, is not going to be fought on the ground with men. It's going to be fought via robots. It's going to be fought via satellites that are able to, surveil globally what's going on. And right now it's run by precision missiles. So when you take all of those factors into consideration, you look at the generals over the last 30 years, they couldn't win a war. There was no clear objective, and it became very clear that this became much more about the military-industrial complex rather than the interests of the American people. And we're not even protecting our own country at our southern border. It's something that the American people are waking up to, and it's very sad because the generals that we've seen at least that are running the show now, they prove how inept they are. And it's very sad because generals used to be revered, but they served at the pleasure of the president. And you had President Truman that fired General MacArthur because he did not like some of the pullback measures that he did. Yet he will probably go down in American history as one of the best, greatest generals that we had. Dwight Eisenhower, also very intellectual guy and well-read, and knew that we can't be running around being the policeman for the entire world. That's just not what we need to do, and that actually hurts our image overseas rather than help.
I like what you said about Trump, too, and let me do this part for the listeners. Kimberly says, it's easy to understand President Trump was a menace to the generals, especially the four stars in the Army and the Marines, in sharp contrast to his predecessors in the White House. Trump declined to accept unconditionality, the general's best military advice. As far as Trump was concerned, the answers he received from his Secretary of Defense and the four stars concerning the need to stay in Afghanistan to build democracy, liberate women, encircle Iran, keep China out and Russia at bay, did not pass the smell test. I love that.
Yeah.
For Trump, neither the Russians nor the Chinese were 10 feet tall, and Afghanistan's security was never as important as the security of Rhode Island, Alabama, or Michigan. And I guess you could go on for the rest of the 57 states.
That was 58.
Let me check. Obama, was it 57 or 50? Oh, you got it. He said 58. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
no,
that,
I mean,
you summed it up perfectly on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and people don't give former President Trump credit for any of this. And, he was, desperately trying to get out of Afghanistan in a responsible manner, not a reckless manner. He wasn't, interested in, drone striking and killing, kids right outside the Kabul airport because they had to have something for TV to, let the American people know that they're on top of this and they're going to get these terrorists that did this. It didn't really work out too swift. And this is why President Trump went through so many generals because they wouldn't listen. And they'd come in his office and lay out their plan. He's like, okay, I told you we need to get out. Or we'll bring back a plan in 90 days. And then they come back and say, well, this happened on the ground, so we need another 90 days. And that successive 90 days worked all the way through his presidency till the very last day. These generals that are running this show right now are incompetent, and they reflect poorly on the military ranks. And they should, if its fact is true, they told Biden what would happen if this is the case, that we exit so quickly and irresponsibly, then the president needs to hold the hat for that, and then you need to have people do all kinds of investigations as to why Biden made such a horrible mistake. But indeed, it was most likely not the latter. It was most likely that the generals just wanted to do what Biden did. They wanted to do it. They're going to do whatever they wanted at the end, and they looked like fools at the end of the day. The American military looked like fools. They looked like they had no idea. They'd never fought a battle, and this is because this exit out of Afghanistan was run by 4 stars and the President of the United States. This was not run by the people, the people on the ground who know the conditions, who've been there for months and sometimes years. These people had the advice, and they're telling their generals and their superiors that everything's going to collapse if you leave, because the Afghan security forces didn't have the capability of holding all of this military weaponry and guarding their country from the Taliban in Afghanistan. They knew that this was going to happen, because they knew that once the Taliban started rolling, and once we saw that second city fall in Afghanistan, we knew, I think most of us knew, that this was going, and it was going to be that people are just throwing down their weapons and they weren't going to fight. And they weren't going to fight because in that country, they'll execute you. And they have no problem doing that. And on top of that, they have no problem going out and killing your family and maybe even your pet goat, just because they want to make that point that people are going to be so scared that they will not talk badly about them, and that they will respond and submit to their way of governance, because that's the only thing they can do. And you better bet that the Taliban went out and rounded up all the pilots that knew how to fly the planes and the helicopters and the surveillance drones and things like that, and said, hey, we've got a deal for you. Either you teach us how to do that, or we're going to kill you, your family, and your pet goat. So what's the choice? What are you going to do? You're going to train them. So now we're going to have a Taliban and Al-Qaeda that's going to have state-of-the-art weaponry sitting there, and they're going to know how to use it, and then they're going to start using it in the region. And that, to me, is just inexcusable and such a dereliction of duty by these generals. They ought to be completely embarrassed and hand in their resignations, or at the very least, then if Biden did not get that advice from them, he needs to fire them, just like President Truman fired General MacArthur, even though his decision years down the road, when they went back and read, and wrote what happened, he made the right decisions, but it isn't what Truman wanted. That's the bottom line. generals, you can hire them and you can fire them. There's no reason why you can say, you know what, I just don't like the way you dress today. I don't like that color, hat you're wearing today. But they don't. There's no reason they can fire them for anything. Nobody's been fired over this, and there's only been one person that's been reprimanded and removed from the military, and that's a lieutenant colonel, down, sitting in Texas and sitting in the brig, because it's just ridiculous. He came out and said, "We told you, we told you."
Yep. He made a YouTube recording on that.
Yeah.
Hey, and by the way, Tucker Carlson announced last night that he has finally been released. But you know what it is? It's like little kids that got mad. I told him not to step over that line, and he did anyway. And so then, they get, it was so childish about the only person that suffered that terrible withdrawal was one, I think he's a Marine, right?
Yep.
He had his own own squad and the whole thing.
Yeah,
Now what he wants to do,
was
he
responsible
just wants to get out of the military.
Yeah, he was responsible for going out in Afghanistan and finding the IEDs and detonating them in a proper manner. And he served in Afghanistan during the past 17 years. So if you're looking to exit a country or wondering what's going to happen with the security on the ground in the country, that's the person you want to go to. They know what's going on. But in this case, the generals thought that they knew better, and they didn't need the assistance of anybody on the ground, and it turned into a fiasco, an embarrassment, and set back our image on a global scheme by nobody's business. You bet that Russia's watching, China's watching, Iran's watching. All of our enemies watched that, and they saw generals make a decision. They saw an inept president make a decision, and they saw that America is becoming nothing more than a paper tiger that can't win a war, which we have not won a war in the last 45 years or so. And that's the realistic, the reality on the ground with that. We don't win wars anymore. And we can't, go to war for hearts and minds, because that's only creating more hatred and hatred. And if you go and look at this, we can go back to Petraeus, and, there's a whole host of generals that were responsible, that served in Afghanistan, and all thought that, we could, allow, girls to go to school, and that they would have equal rights. They wouldn't have to wear burqas, things of that nature. That's just not that country. It's a landlocked country that Genghis Khan went all the way around because he didn't want one drop of blood loss of his soldiers when he was fighting. He didn't go through Afghanistan. He knew it's the graveyard of empires.
Isn't it amazing, though? This was when it was all going on, and the airplanes were leaving, and they were packed full. Nobody wearing a mask, by the way, but anyway, that's another story. But, you couldn't get another one on there, right?
Yeah.
And then they had the terrible pictures of people that couldn't get inside the plane, and so they had to jump, killed. And I'm thinking, wow, Biden is bringing them over the southern border right and left, and now he's bringing them out of Afghanistan,
Yeah, we're fighting.
His whole depopulation or increased population of America, changing the main look of America, I guess.
Yeah, well,
I think,
you look at,
he's happy.
He's happy with that. He's happy with that. Americans ought to be outraged with this, because we're now finding more Al-Qaeda affiliates that are crossing the border, and for every one of those guys we catch, we probably miss about another 4 or 5 they're sneaking in. And you got to believe that on all of those flights with those refugees that they brought to this country, that they have no paperwork. We don't know who they are. You don't go into a database over in Afghanistan. Oh, he was born in this province, went to this school. There's none of that. But you better believe that there's some Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or Taliban on those planes thinking, oh my gosh, they're paying for me to get there.
Yeah, and then who knows how many terrorists have gotten in, in fact, they were coming across the border, the southern border.
Yep.
They were identifying 4 or 5, that they call it.
Yeah, it's easy.
It only takes 11.
Yep.
Yeah.
Only takes
it takes 11 to really pull it off.
Yep.
Boy, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's
we're getting ready to head into some scary waters, and I trust the rank and file of the military, that they will, conduct business and do the best of their ability and do everything they can to communicate with their senior advisors and the generals. But I'm telling you, the generals, the McMasters, these people, they have no allegiance to this country. They have allegiance to politics, and the politicians that have all of these defense contracting, plants located all across countries, so they can secure that they were going to continue to get their money. All that's mingling in Washington, D.C., and the net result of it is what we saw leaving Afghanistan under this administration.
I think the oar in the boat is their ego, the generals, because, and you can see them getting it. I mean, people get it in other professions too, but military, I mean, it takes a little while to get 3 stripes, boy, and then you all of a sudden, I mean, gosh, and then you get the little goodies that look like a shield, and you say, boy, he's really doing good. Yeah. Well, Kimberly, we're going to let you go. I know you got some stuff you got to do, and appreciate your visit.
All right.
And once again, this will be posted later on thekdreport.com, and it's Kimberly Dvorak, Dvorak. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Chuck.